Hey, Shabbat Shalom. There's been a lot of talk about anti-Semitism happening right here in New York City, throughout the world. And I just came from a panel discussion at EY at Ernst & Young to talk about practical things we can do to protest against anti-Semitism, whether it's coming from the right or it's coming from the left. But there's something else we need to keep in mind that I think is hinted to us in this week's parsha, and that is more of a spiritual response to when our enemies come out of the woodwork. In this week's parsha, the Torah tells us that Abraham, who had dug all of these wells during his life, the Philistines stopped them up. They literally put dirt back into the wells, and Yitzchak, who is Abraham's son, digs up those very same wells, giving the wells the very same names that his father Abraham had called them. The question is, what is this kind of like game with the wells? First of all, why would the Plishtim, why would the Philistines want to stop up a well? It's got good water, even if you don't like Abraham. You know, it's like cutting your nose to spite yourself. And what was the symbolism here in Yitzchak redigging them and giving them the same names? Rabbi Soloveitchik explains that Abraham spent his life spreading and promoting monotheism, ethical monotheism. It was a new way of looking at life and at the world. He developed many followers, but he also made some enemies, the Philistines among them. And therefore, as long as Avram was alive, there was nothing they could do. He had a large and prominent following. He was wealthy, he was powerful, but they knew he was mortal. They knew that one day when he would die, if they could just get rid of whatever memory there would ever be of this man, Abraham, then Abraham and all of his teachings would die along. So they stopped up the well. Even though it wasn't good for them, they wanted to keep Abraham and his teachings of ethical monotheism from remaining in the world, and that's precisely why Isaac digs them up. And the well, of course, is very symbolic. The well is the wellspring of Torah, of Judaism, of water. Water is what keeps us alive. Yitzchak understood that his job was to perpetuate the Masorah, was to continue the traditions and the ideas and teaching what his father had taught and lived for his whole life, and continuing what's called in Hebrew the Masorah, our Jewish tradition. So something to think about while we're dealing with anti-Semitism. Of course, first and foremost, we have to call it out, whether it's coming from the right or the left. We have to identify it, we have to fight against it. Whether it's against Israel, it's against individual Jews, it doesn't matter. But there's something else that we have to remember. What are we fighting for? Ultimately, what we're fighting to preserve is Jewish culture, Jewish tradition, Jewish spirituality, to be a light amongst the nations, to bring the world our Torah. And that's something we should reinvigorate ourselves when we are attacked. We should not only push back in terms of who we are, just identifying ourselves as Jews, but what we stand for and what are our values. Those values, my friends, come from the Torah. They come from our parents and our grandparents. And just like Isaac perpetuated Abraham's teachings, redug the wells, gave them the same names, we should all be zocha, you and I, all of us together. We should all merit to continue to study, to learn, and maybe even study and learn more, perform even more mitzvot, because the best way to deal with any kind of hatred is to respond with love, and Judaism expresses just that. Shabbat Shalom.